Today we're going to take a look at this idea of consecutive integers. We already know what integers are, but what are consecutive integers? Well, consecutive integers are integers that are one right after the other, like negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, or 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on. Even integers, consecutive even integers would be like 10, 12, 14, and so on. Consecutive odd integers, 1, 3, 5, and so on. Or negative 9, negative 7, negative 5, negative 3. So these are examples of consecutive integers, consecutive even integers, and consecutive odd integers. If n is an integer, what is an expression for the next integer? Well, to get from one integer to the next, we just go up by 1. So if n is one integer, the integer after it would be n plus 1. What is an expression for the next three integers after that? Well, the first integer was n, the next one was n plus 1. The one after that would be n plus 2, and the one after that would be n plus 3, and then after that we'd have n plus 4, and so on. We just keep adding one more to get to the next integer. And then what about the integer immediately preceding a specific integer? Well, the integer immediately preceding 13 is 12, so we have to go back 1. So instead of adding 1, if we're talking about the integer immediately preceding, we say n minus 1. Alright, let's take a look at some examples. And here's our first example. This first example states, says, an equation states the sum of 4 consecutive integers starting with n is 66. So we need to write the equation for this. So our first integer would be n, and our integer after that would be n plus 1. And I'm going to put parentheses around this for emphasis, to show that's our next integer, the n with the 1. Then our next integer after that would be n plus 2. And it says 4 of them, so I need one more, n plus 3. And it's the sum, so that's why I'm adding these together. And it says the sum is 66. So here's our sum, 66. And that's all we're going to do with this. Eventually we're going to be learning how to solve equations like this. But this is what we're going to do with it for now. Here's one that's a little more challenging. It says to write an equation for the following situation. The sum of 3 consecutive odd integers is 100 more than the smallest integer. So consecutive odds. So if you think about it, 1, 3, 5, and so on are examples of consecutive odds. And to go from one to the other, we have to add 2 to go from one consecutive integer, odd integer, to the next one. So our first consecutive odd integer is going to be n. Our one after that is going to be n plus 2, and the consecutive odd after that one is n plus 4. So it says the sum of these, so let me write this as a sum. The first integer is n, the next one is n plus 2, and the third one is n plus 4. So we've got the sum of our 3 consecutive odd integers is, right here we have the word is, and as we know, is means equals. So we have equals 100 more than the smallest. So 100 more than means we're adding 100 to, what are we adding it to? The smallest, and our smallest value was n. So this is the equation for this situation. The sum of 3 consecutive odd integers is 100 more than the smallest. Now, I know you might think that, well, this doesn't seem like this is right because this has a plus 2 and a plus 4. But think about it. Let's say our smallest integer was 49. Well, then 49 plus 2 would be 51, and 49 plus 4 would be 53. So we would have 3 consecutive odd integers. It just depends on what the first value is. If the first value here is odd, then these two numbers in the parentheses here, n plus 2 and n plus 4, will also be odd. If our first n here was even, then adding 2 and adding 4 would give us more evens. So don't be concerned that, well, this isn't going to work because this is a plus 2 and a plus 4 and plus 2 and plus 4 are even. It will actually work. Don't forget to go to tinyurl to do the screencast at tinyurl.